So here's the thing. I want to end this on a conspiracy theory that really hasn't been disproven. And it's funny because as I was reading about this, it's a conspiracy theory I followed for a long time. When I was reading the article about this, they go, this theory's been disproven. Check the link here. I clicked on the link. It didn't disprove it. I think this one, it might be clocked up more to coincidence, but as Garrick once said,
I believe in coincidences. Coincidences happen every day. But I don't trust coincidences.
Oh man, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, best television show. Best television show ever made. I've watched it all the way through 2 times, and I think 2.5 times. I love that show. But anyways, so we all know about the Titanic. Whether you knew about the historical event or the movie, you know about it. It's the great big boat that got hit by an iceberg, or hit an iceberg, whichever one is more grammatically correct. But anyways, so hit an iceberg, it sank, a bunch of people died, and at the ending, the girl threw the heart of the ocean. Was it the heart of the ocean? Yeah, heart of the ocean, into the ocean, and then she becomes a ghost. That itself is not a huge conspiracy theory. What is a huge conspiracy theory is why it sank. Now, of course, people have said the boat was supposed to be unsinkable, and it hit an iceberg, and it cut it open, and I'm not really arguing with the technical sides of that. There's a few Titanic conspiracy theories, and they're all kind of fascinating. The one that I wanted to start talking about was why it sank, or who sank it is a better course of action. I'm not necessarily saying this is a true conspiracy, but again, it's just kind of a fascinating story. So, J.P. Morgan was the owner of the White Star Line, the boat line that the Titanic sailed under. Was it still called sail if it didn't have any sails? Anyways, so what happened was at the time, the Titanic, so it was like 1910, 1912, there's this debate over whether or not to start a Federal Reserve. So the United States would have a Federal Reserve Bank. It's still controversial to this day. It's not a... So the Federal Reserve is actually not part of the federal government. It existed because of an act of Congress, but it's not a... It's a private corporation, basically. And for the most part, it can control, it sets interest rates. It has, quote unquote, like control over our financial rules. Setting the interest rate's a big one because it kind of determines how people are loaning money and borrowing money and stuff like that. But it's not a government organization. We can appoint, Ben Bernanke or Alan Greenspan and stuff like that, but it's more set up like a private corporation. So there are people against the establishment of a Federal Reserve. They didn't want a federal head controlling money policy. And this is, like I said, we're going back to like 1910, 1912, around this time period. Well, and J.P. Morgan was on this side of, yes, we need to set up a Federal Reserve. And there was 3 people who were against there's multiple people against setting up the Federal Reserve. These were some of the most powerful. It was Benjamin Guggenheim, who you might recognize his name from Guggenheim fast food restaurants. There was Asa Strauss, who is the inheritor of the Levi Strauss. I'm making that up. Benjamin Guggenheim, Asa Strauss, and Jacob Astor. And I know Astor and Guggenheim. I don't know Strauss. I was making the Levi joke up. But anyways, both of them, according to this graphic that I'm looking at, were worth a total of $11 billion. And that's probably in today money. Maybe back then. But anyways, they were adamantly opposed to the establishment of a Federal Reserve. And all 3 of those men were on the Titanic, and all 3 of those men died the night it sank. So that's a fact. Those 3 men died during the sinking of the Titanic, and J.P. Morgan, owner of the White Star Line, was for the Federal Reserve, and they were against that. So the conspiracy is that the Titanic was sunk to eliminate powerful opposition to the establishment of the Federal Reserve. Creepy, if true. Possible, maybe. So that's a conspiracy theory that's been floating around for a long time. And it's one of those things that sometimes terrible events happen and they take on a life of their own. We've seen stuff where, the 9/11 was taken down because there was a bunch of gold in the basement of one of the buildings and someone wanted to steal it, or a bunch of money went missing from the federal government and they wanted to hide that up, so they destroyed all that stuff. That's fairly unlikely. But I could see that if you were... I'm a powerful man and I have 3 people who are equally as powerful, maybe even more powerful, trying to stop me and my side from creating this Federal Reserve, which will benefit me endlessly. It'll benefit you endlessly, too. So why don't you just get on our side? And they're like, no, JP, we're not following your plans, and let's all hop on this boat and take a trip, and he sinks it. Now, I like that conspiracy theory. I think it's an interesting one. Some of the problems with it, just to be fair, one, if they were at such war with JP Morgan, why would they ride his boat? Why would they go on his boat? That's a question I have. Two, bullets are cheaper than sinking a boat. And you could say, well, Jason, if the whole boat sinks, you can get them all three at once. But then it leads to my third question. What if they survived? What if they hopped on the life rafts right away? What if there were enough life rafts? What if the rescue ship showed up early enough? So on and so forth. So it's an interesting conspiracy theory. It's possible. I enjoy it. I enjoy that conspiracy theory. And it does fit the idea of what a good conspiracy theory is. And I guess when I keep saying a good conspiracy theory is, I basically am saying a conspiracy theory you can't really disprove. It involves time plus distance because it happened in the middle of the ocean a long time ago. It involved a group we don't trust, which is billionaires and corporations, things like that, and a little bit of the government. And it has very few people involved in it. You would just need, well, actually, now that I think about it, it would basically, someone on the boat would have had to steer it into the iceberg. Never mind. That conspiracy theory is pretty ridiculous, too. Now that I've actually put a little bit of thought into it, you would have had to know there was an iceberg in that area, crash into it on purpose, and do enough damage for it to sink. And I know there's also a conspiracy theory that it didn't even hit an iceberg, but at a certain point, you kind of got to go, yeah, and pterodactyls could have shown up and eaten everybody. Like, at a certain point, you have to accept a certain amount of facts in any given story. So there we go. There's tonight's episode. I guess I actually ended up disproving a conspiracy theory that I've talked about. I mean, unless they really paid him off or paid off the captain's family, why would you steer your boat into an iceberg for money to die in the cold? That doesn't really work. Unless... Nah, I got nothing. That was a clip from our daily podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime news. If you want to hear the full episode that this clip came from, check the link below. Please like and subscribe. And hit that little bell, too. That does some magical stuff. Thanks, guys.